Remember Earthbound Sim games? You know, those run-and-gun platformers starring a worm in a spacesuit known for its cartoony surreal humor? Well, how about the same development team keeps the surreal humor but adds more edge to it and make it 3D? This train of thought led to the 1997 cult classic action shooter MDK.
Credited for the original concept and as one of the designers is Nick Bruti, who is also known for similarly styled Giant Citizen Kabuto and Armed and Dangerous. There were plans for a whole media franchise that eventually didn't venture outside of video games and would have included a cartoon series from the makers of Reboot and a toy line. You heard it correctly, a toy line. That is the primary reason why the makers of this game couldn't use the phrase behind the initials murder, death, kill in the marketing. Well, that is the officially given meaning, but the manual's backstory blurb says it to be mission, deliver kindness, and because that's the only in-universe given explanation for the title, I consider it to be canon.
Then again, that abbreviation can mean anything depending on the mood of the day, and that is an official statement. The manual's story portion has like 8 pages of rambling diary entries from the sound-mad scientist Dr. Fluke Hopkins, but to the typical fashion of the era, what it amounts to in the game itself is just small snippets of text between missions where Hopkins is declaring that an alien minecraft will attacking some random small city no one has ever heard of. What? You expected Proust or something? Go kick ass!
From the manual we can surmise that the player character is Kurt Hectic, the Doctor's janitor who reluctantly has to do all the hero stuff. He dons the Doctor's invention Call Suit, a light battle armor that comes with a parachute and weak but infinite ammo having chain gun that also has limited ammo super version available that can be changed into the game's biggest gameplay innovation, Sniper Rifle, with several different ammunitions that are used in equal amounts on puzzle solving and for firepower increase. Considering this game's quarter-century technology, it is impressive how far you can zoom with it. There are other methods for fighting like several grenades and some more imaginative choices like a full-on airstrike from Hopkins' robot dog Max Bones. Or max damage, they really didn't want that clearly. However, one thing that makes this game more cumbersome right from the start is its clumsy controls. This is from the era when developers hadn't yet figured out what to do with the mouse in 3D environments, so in this game's case it's for slightly nudging Kurt forward. However, it is also used to fully move sniper view, so you have to awkwardly switch between 2 different control styles. There's by the way no button mapping options. This is somewhat eased by the enemies not being functionally that different from each other, but they in turn compensate for that by their sheer mass.
Added to that, the levels have time limits, which is not mentioned anywhere. It's, by the way, that green circle around the hit point number. If that circle runs out, then a minecraft has completed its mission in destroying a small town, which makes this game unnecessarily stressful, as it never allows proper room for taking in the controls or the mechanics or exploring the environment. Oddly though, their destruction doesn't cause a game over, so I'm not sure if that actually has any proper gameplay consequences, but I'm not willing to find out. I mean, do you want the destruction of Kirkcaldy, Scotland on your conscience? Didn't think so.
Speaking of levels, there's only 6 of them and they mostly consist of singular wide areas, sometimes a bit too wide, that are cut by corridors. They vary them with all sorts of minigames like plane bombing and skating that can be entertaining, but level design in general is unfocused and can be cryptic by accident. Like here where you have to jump in specific way to get to this ledge, or this part where the world's smallest nuclear bomb failed to open a door because you have to place it on the ground next to it instead of, you know, right on the door. So yeah, weirdness is the modus operandi here, and because of the constantly changing mechanics and events, I felt the game's weirdness didn't have focus, like it was strange just for the sake of being strange. Graphics are angular and pointy aside from the unclear 2D sprite of Kurt that, to be fair, was one of the earliest uses of motion capture in video games, but at least the art's purposeful ugliness supports the intended unnerving oddness. The best part of this whole package though is the soundtrack done by legendary Tommy Tallarico, And while the tracks are usually too short during the game events, they are an interesting mix of orchestra compostness and cartoony antics.
In the end, MDK is a mixed package for me. The controls are archaic and it tries way too hard in its quest for weirdness, especially with that bizarre ending. But I can respect the intent to an extent, and the gameplay is decently fun enough that the overall experience is on the plus side. I mean, the only reason why I got this first ever purchase from Good Old Games is because I was curious to see the prequel for one of my childhood staples, MDK 2.
The sequel was released in 2000 and because the folks at the original dev team Sun Entertainment were busy with other projects, the responsibility of its development was given to the then unknown team BioWare, with one of its founders Greg Sesuk of later Baldur's Gate and Mass Effect fame as the new project lead. Technical advancements have obviously happened with clearer, more color-varying graphics, but biggest change to its predecessor is indeed promoting Max and the Doctor as playable characters, all of them having wildly different mechanics. But I shall go into further detail about that later, because now it's time to start our tale by recapping what happened in the previous game in this 1950s pulp fiction comic style that, outside of opening and closing cutscenes, is unfortunately only used for loading screens. Those who didn't read manuals for either game also get to know the first game's villain to be named Gunter Glad, but that doesn't matter because he's dead and he's never mentioned for the rest of the series.
As you could hear from the recap, we now have voice acting. Though this is one of those early 2000s examples where the actors are credited but none of their roles. Still, even though they're not the most versatile bunch, these guys do acceptable enough performance and fit well for this pseudo Silver Age style.
Don't sell yourself short. Those aliens never knew what hit them. A major setback for them, I'm certain.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over.
A hero's rest is short, however, as there was still one mine crawl left plowing the city of Edmonton, Canada, so here we go again! After clearing that, Kurt is captured by the new Alien Force frontman, the cool and suave Swang Swing, and the narrative continues from there with the heroes taking turns in making lives of the invaders more difficult. It's not anything deep or even organized, but there are some surprises, and the dialogue manages to keep things fresh with its humor that, while not particularly clever, is amusing with its vague fragrance of sarcasm and the occasional slapstick portions. Damn, I laughed so hard to this extraterrestrial carnage as a kid.
While comedy is what gives this series its identity, it's noticeably subdued weirdness-wise in this entry. I prefer it this way over the previous game's just throw it in style, though most of the comedy is left for cutscenes, leaving the gameplay itself pretty much devoid of it, aside from few moments here and there. I don't mind it that much, but I admit that some of the outlandish weapon choices are no longer here, aside from like black hole bombs. So let's take a closer look at the three different gameplay styles of these three-player characters, each of them having 3 levels plus the 10th one where you can choose your hero. I recommend Kurt, much better catharsis that way.
First though, you can finally use mouse for controlling camera and have everyone move so smoothly. Kurt's gameplay continues with the same stealth but not really snapping format, though there are more puzzles that depend on what triggers Kurt shoots in which order, and sometimes a specific bullet is required, like here with the ricochetting spring bullet. Even everyone's music tracks are different, Kurt getting a small yet excellent collection of techno orchestra by the equally legendary Jesper Good that really emphasizes the massive scale of the levels that is still compact enough not to be annoying to move in. Granted, the story isn't moody enough to justify this music style, but I'm glad it's here.
I do remember Kurt's puzzles being on the tougher side for a newcomer. Though, when it comes to the enemy encounter difficulty that have more varying attack patterns than in the first game, well, I can't comment on it that much, because I have completed this game for like 10 times during the course of 2 decades, so I have become quite an MDK pro. Well, at least in PC port you can change the difficulty if it feels too easy, unlike in the unfortunate Dreamcast port.
Max's levels on the other hand are pure bullet bacchanal. Extra pair of arms allows 4 weapons at the same time that includes magnums, shotguns, Uzis, Gatling guns and others that are rather effective in destroying everything and everyone your enemies have ever loved. They are a bit on the easy side, but damn the constant blasting can be so entertaining, even if I've grown out of this loud electro-chuck music Max's levels have. There is some problem solving in the form of his jetpack, a mechanic not explained in his cough of a tutorial that does slow down the action, but I understand it to be necessary for pacing reasons. On the opposite end, puzzle solving is present in full force in Dr. Hopkins' levels. He has the lowest health and the most limited moveset. He can't even lift himself up. What a loser. So his arsenal consists of a selection of miscellaneous trash that he can combine into handy tools, his weapon of choice being an atomic toaster that tends to be imprecise. Critics seem to think the Doctor's portions to be the weakest aspect of the whole game, and I kind of agree, not because of the limited movement or clumsy platforming parts, because the PC port allows quick saving anywhere, so while annoying, they're not that big of a deal. However, his unique mechanic of combining items is pretty much forgotten after his first level, and after that the gameplay is focused on pushing buttons at the right order, so he is reduced to a more crippled version of the 2 more competent fighters. At least all characters get to have some inventive boss battles, and even the less interesting ones are more cohesive than the first game's chaotic bullet raves.
Also, I do like the Doctor's music selection. That is perhaps the closest this game's intended pulp sci-fi vibe. Well, despite its flaws, MDK 2 is mighty damn kudos.
Unlike in other game duology comparisons I've done recently, here the winner gets his position with a larger landslide. The sequel simply looks better, plays better, even if the half-key segments aren't used to their fullest potential, sounds better despite recycling its music too often, has more variety in its enemy encounters, and the level design manages to use its scope better to its advantage. Also, the funny dialogue has given some meat on the bones of the core trio, and while the plot isn't super complex, it's entertaining enough. That being said, I don't consider the first MDK a bad game by a long shot. Most of its shortcomings are because of the more limited technology of the time, and its comedy is too random for its own good, but it has a wider weapon selection than its more famous younger brother. Both are rather entertaining time, but if you prefer modern pleasantries, the sequel is the way to go.
Unfortunately, despite the initial grand plans, the franchise really didn't get anywhere else. Aside from the second game's slightly altered PlayStation 2 version titled MDK 2 Armageddon and the sequel's 2011 HD remake. I mean, I don't mind it that much. The series ended on a pretty satisfying note, but man, if there was one game I'd like to make a sequel for, it would be this one. Man can dream.